The harsh buzz of his phone vibrated across the glass nightstand at 2:33 a.m., cutting through the silence of David Foster's Nob Hill apartment. The San Francisco skyline glittered beyond his floor-to-ceiling windows, a view he'd earned after 7 years of 18-hour days building his cybersecurity startup from nothing. 3 months ago, he'd sold it for $42 million. Now, at 38, he had everything he'd ever worked for and somehow felt emptier than when he'd been coding in a cramped studio apartment. He reached for the phone, squinting at the screen. Unknown number, probably spam. His finger hovered over the decline button, but something made him answer. Hello? Static. Then a small voice, barely a whisper. I don't know if this is right. I'm supposed to call my emergency contact, but I don't have one anymore. David sat up, suddenly alert. The voice belonged to a child. Who is this? Are you okay? They said I have to have someone. Someone who can come get me. But there's nobody. The voice cracked. I pressed a random number. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. Wait. Don't hang up. David swung his legs out of bed, his heart racing. Where are you? Are you hurt? UCSF Medical Center. 4th floor, room 412. The words came out mechanical, rehearsed by someone who'd been asked too many times. My name is Lily Chen. I'm 9 years old. My parents died 4 days ago in a car accident on Highway 101, and the social worker says I can't stay here alone anymore, but I don't have anywhere to go. David's breath caught. 4 days. This kid had been alone in a hospital for 4 days. Lily, my name is David. I'm going to come there, okay? Don't go anywhere. I'll be there in 20 minutes. You don't have to. I shouldn't have called. Everyone keeps asking who they should call, and I kept thinking maybe if I called someone, anyone, they might. She trailed off. I'm really tired of being alone. The words hit him like a fist to the chest. 15 years ago, those same words had echoed through his own mind when he was 23 and watching his 8-year-old sister Sophie die of leukemia. Their parents were already gone by then, killed by a drunk driver 2 years earlier. He'd been her guardian, her only person, and when she died, the emptiness had nearly destroyed him. I'm already getting dressed, David said, pulling on jeans with one hand. Stay on the phone with me, okay? Tell me about your favorite color. Blue, like the ocean. My dad used to take me to Ocean Beach every Sunday morning before. Her voice wavered. Why are you helping me? You don't even know me. David paused, one arm through his jacket. Why was he? He'd built walls around himself for 15 years, focused only on work, on success, on never feeling that helpless again. But hearing this kid's voice, so small and lost in the night, something cracked open inside him. Because somebody should, he said quietly. And right now, I can. That's enough. 18 minutes later, David pushed through the automatic doors of UCSF Medical Center. The fluorescent lights felt harsh after the darkness outside. A tired-looking security guard glanced up from his desk. I'm here for Lily Chen, room 412, David said. The guard frowned. Visiting hours are over. Family only. David hesitated. What was he? A stranger who answered a desperate call. I'm her emergency contact. The guard's expression softened slightly. Poor kid. Social worker's been trying to reach someone all day. 4th floor, turn right off the elevator. Room 412 was at the end of a long corridor that smelled like antiseptic and recycled air. David knocked softly before pushing open the door. The girl, sitting on the hospital bed, looked impossibly small. She wore an oversized sweatshirt with a cartoon cat on it, her dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Her eyes, when they met his, were old beyond her years, the kind of eyes that had seen too much too soon. You actually came, Lily whispered. David stepped into the room, his throat tight. I said I would. People say things. She picked at the edge of her blanket. They don't always mean them. A movement near the window caught his attention. A woman in her 50s with a clipboard stood up, her expression wary. I'm Karen Mills, the overnight social worker. And you are? David Foster. Lily called me. Karen's eyebrows rose. She called you? Mr. Foster, I need to verify your relationship to the patient. Are you family? A family friend? David glanced at Lily, who was watching him with an expression that made his chest ache. Hope mixed with the certainty of disappointment. I'm someone who wants to help. Karen's face shifted into professional sympathy. That's very kind. But Child Protective Services requires documentation, background checks, home studies. This little girl needs a licensed foster placement, and we have procedures. How long do those procedures take? David interrupted. At least 72 hours for emergency placement. Unfortunately, it's Friday night, so realistically we're looking at Monday afternoon, at the earliest before we can process. So she stays here alone all weekend? Karen's jaw tightened. We're doing our best with limited resources. There's a shortage of foster families, and Lily's case is complicated. Her parents died in what appears to be a single-vehicle accident, but there are some unusual circumstances that CPS needs to investigate before placement. What kind of unusual circumstances? I can't discuss case details with someone who isn't authorized. Karen turned to Lily. Sweetie, Mr. Foster seems very nice, but he's a stranger. You understand why you can't just leave with him, right? Lily nodded slowly, but her hand reached under her pillow and pulled out something small, a silver locket on a delicate chain. She clutched it tightly. Can he at least stay for a little while, please? I don't want to be alone again. Karen looked between them, then sighed. 15 minutes. I'll be at the nurse's station if you need anything. She paused at the door. Mr. Foster, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but this situation requires more than good intentions. When the door closed, Lily looked up at David. You should probably go. She's right. I shouldn't have called a random person. David pulled a chair closer to the bed and sat down. You want to tell me what happened? My parents died. That's what happened. Her voice was flat, mechanical. They were driving home from a dinner in Palo Alto. The car went off the road near Devil's Slide. The police said my dad must have fallen asleep, but that doesn't make sense because my dad never fell asleep driving. He was really careful. He always said the most dangerous thing in the world was someone not paying attention behind the wheel. David noticed how she gripped the locket tighter as she spoke. What's that you're holding? Lily glanced down. My mom's locket. The hospital gave it to me with their things. It's the only thing I have left. She opened it, revealing a tiny photo of a couple. The man wore glasses and had kind eyes. The woman had Lily's same delicate features. That's them, Dr. Michael Chen and Dr. Sarah Chen. They were both biomedical researchers at Stanford. Researchers, David repeated. Something in his gut twitched. That same instinct that had made him suspicious of data anomalies when he was building his company's fraud detection algorithms. What kind of research? Something about genetic testing. They were really excited about it a few months ago. They said they might have found something important. Lily's eyes filled with tears. They were always working late, but they promised that after they finished this project, we'd take a real vacation. Maybe Hawaii. I've never been to Hawaii. David's mind was already racing, connecting dots that might not exist. Researchers find something important, then die in a convenient accident. Did they ever seem worried? Like maybe someone was upset about their work? Lily blinked. There was a man. About 2 weeks before the accident, he came to our house late at night. I was supposed to be asleep, but I heard them arguing. My dad kept saying I won't hide the data, and people deserve to know. The man said something about consequences. My dad told him to leave. A chill ran down David's spine. This wasn't just a tragic accident. Did you tell the social worker about this? I tried. She said I was probably confused because of trauma, that I shouldn't make up stories. Lily's voice turned bitter. Adults never believe kids. David leaned forward. I believe you. Lily studied him for a long moment. Why? Because I used to think like your parents. In my old job, I built systems to catch people hiding things they shouldn't hide. Data tells stories if you know how to listen. He paused. Can I see that locket? Lily hesitated, then handed it over. David examined it carefully. Standard silver locket, seemed old, probably an heirloom. He was about to hand it back when he noticed something. The locket was slightly thicker than it should be, the back panel not quite flush. "Do you mind if I try something?" At Lily's nod, he carefully worked his thumbnail under the back panel's edge. It popped open, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was a micro SD card. Lily gasped. "I didn't know that was there." David held up the tiny card. "Your mum hid this for a reason. I think your parents knew they were in danger." "What's on it?" "I don't know, but I'm going to find out." David pulled out his phone. "Lily, I need you to do something for me. I need you to trust me, just for a little while. Can you do that?" She nodded slowly. "I'm going to talk to the social worker. I'm going to do whatever it takes to make sure you're safe, that you're not alone. But I also need to find out what really happened to your parents. Will you help me?" "How?" "By remembering everything you can, every detail, every strange thing that happened before the accident." He handed back the locket. "And by keeping this safe, don't show it to anyone else yet, okay?" Lily clutched the locket. "Are you going to leave now?" The question was asked with such careful detachment, as if she was already preparing for his inevitable exit. David recognized that defense mechanism. He'd perfected it himself after Sophie died. "No," he said firmly. "I'm going to go fight with some bureaucrats, and then I'm coming back, I promise." People break promises. "Yeah, they do. But I'm not going to break this one." He stood up. "What's your favorite food?" The question caught her off guard. Chicken nuggets? The dinosaur-shaped ones." David smiled. "I'll bring some when I come back. The cafeteria here is terrible anyway." He found Karen at the nurse's station, typing on a computer. She looked up as he approached. "Mr. Foster, your 15 minutes are—" "What do I need to do?" David interrupted. "Background check, home study, whatever paperwork you need, I'll get it done. Tonight if possible." Karen set down her pen. "Mr. Foster, the system doesn't work that way. Emergency foster care requires training, certification, home inspections that take weeks, sometimes months. You can't just decide to take care of a child you met an hour ago. Why not? People become parents every day with zero training. That's different. Those are biological. So biology is the only thing that qualifies someone to care about a kid." David's voice rose, and he forced himself to calm down. "Look, I know how this sounds. Stranger shows up in the middle of the night, wants to take a kid home. I get it. But that little girl in there has been alone for 4 days. She's scared and traumatized, and she called a random number because she literally has no one else. Tell me the system is better than that." Karen's expression softened. "I agree, it's heartbreaking. But my job is to protect her, and part of that means following protocols that exist for good reasons. How do I know you're not a predator? How do I know you're stable? You could be anyone." "Fine. Run my background check right now. David Foster, age 38, current address 1200 Mason Street, apartment 24B. I sold my cybersecurity company 3 months ago, so my financials are easily verifiable. I have no criminal record. I've never even had a parking ticket. Check whatever databases you need." Karen studied him. "Even if everything checks out, you're talking about becoming a foster parent. That's a serious commitment. This isn't just giving her a place to sleep for the weekend. Lily needs stability, routine, therapy to process her trauma. She needs someone who understands what they're signing up for." David thought about the SD card hidden in the locket. Whatever was on that card, someone had killed for it, which meant Lily might still be in danger. "What if I told you I don't think her parents' death was an accident?" Karen's eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about?" "Her parents were researchers. They found something important. Someone came to their house and argued with them 2 weeks before they died. Now they're dead, and their daughter is conveniently lost in the system." He leaned closer. "What if someone is counting on that? What if the safest place for Lily right now is with someone who's not in any database as being connected to her?" "That's quite a conspiracy theory, Mr. Foster. 3 years ago, I helped the FBI track a corporate espionage ring that was stealing biomedical research from Stanford and selling it overseas. I know how these things work. I know how people who find inconvenient truths end up in convenient accidents. He met her eyes. Check the accident report. I bet you'll find something doesn't add up. Karen was quiet for a long moment. Even if I believed you, which I'm not saying I do, I can't just hand over a child based on suspicions. Then don't. Do the background check. Start the paperwork. But let me stay with her tonight. Let me be the person she calls when she's scared, instead of leaving her alone in a hospital room. His voice dropped. Please. I know what it's like to be 9 years old and terrified and completely alone in the world. I know what that does to you. She deserves better. Something in his tone must have resonated. Karen sighed. I'll run your background check, and I'll make some calls about expediting the emergency placement paperwork. But Mr. Foster, if anything doesn't check out, or if I get even the slightest bad feeling about this, you're done. Understood? Understood. And you stay where I can see you. No leaving the hospital with her until I have proper authorization. David nodded. Karen pulled up a database on her computer and started typing. 15 minutes later, she looked up, surprise clear on her face. Well, you weren't kidding about being clean. No record at all. I told you. Background check is just the first step. I'll need to verify your housing situation, financial stability, and I'll need to contact Child Protective Services about emergency temporary placement. She glanced at the clock. It's almost 4 a.m. I'll start making calls when offices open at 8. Until then, you can stay with her, but you don't leave this floor. Thank you. Karen's expression was still wary. Don't make me regret this. David returned to room 412. Lily was exactly where he'd left her, staring at the ceiling. She turned her head when he entered. You came back. I said I would. He settled into the chair. The social worker is working on paperwork. It's going to take a few hours. Then what? Then we figure out what's on that SD card, and we find out what really happened to your parents. Lily sat up slowly. You really believe me? About the man who came to our house? I do, and I think your parents hid that card because they knew they were in trouble. They wanted to protect you, and they wanted to protect whatever they'd found. He paused. Do you remember anything else? Any other strange things before the accident? Lily was quiet, thinking. Our house was broken into, about a week before, but nothing was taken. The police said it was probably kids looking for easy cash, and they got spooked. But my dad was really upset. He moved a bunch of his work stuff to a safety deposit box at the bank. Do you know which bank? Wells Fargo, on El Camino Real in Palo Alto. I went with him. He said if anything ever happened to him, I should go to that bank and ask for box 237. She looked down. I thought he was just being paranoid. He was always worried about his research being stolen. David filed that information away. A safety deposit box. More data. More pieces of the puzzle. What time did your parents leave for dinner that night? The night of the accident. Around 7. They were meeting someone at a restaurant in Palo Alto. Someone from a pharmaceutical company, I think. They said they'd be home by 10. Her voice cracked. They never came home. Who were they meeting? I don't know. But my mum was nervous. She kept checking her phone. She told me to lock all the doors after they left and not to answer for anyone. David's mind raced. A meeting with a pharmaceutical company, researchers who'd found something important, a data breach attempt, an argument with a threatening stranger, and then a convenient, fatal accident. This wasn't paranoia. This was a pattern. Lily, I need to tell you something. The next few days might be scary. There might be people asking questions, and if I'm right about what's going on, we need to be careful about who we trust. Can you be brave for a little while longer? I've been brave for 4 days already. Her eyes met his. Why are you doing this? Really? David was quiet for a moment. When I was 23, my little sister died. She was 8 years old. I was her only family, and I promised her I'd always protect her, but I couldn't. I couldn't save her. And for 15 years, I've been running from that feeling of helplessness. He looked at Lily. Maybe this is me trying to keep a promise I couldn't keep back then. Or maybe it's just that I answered the phone when someone needed help. Either way, I'm here now, and I'm not leaving. Lily's eyes filled with tears. I miss them so much. I know. I'm sorry. Everyone keeps saying it gets easier. Does it? David thought about Sophie, about the ache that never really went away, but just became part of who he was. It gets different. You learn to carry it, and you don't have to carry it alone. Lily wiped her eyes. You promise you won't disappear? Everyone I love disappears. I promise. She stared at him for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, I'll trust you. But if you break your promise, I'm never trusting anyone again. Deal. As dawn broke through the hospital windows, David sat with Lily while she finally fell asleep, exhausted from days of fear and grief. He pulled out his phone and carefully inserted the micro SD card into an adapter, then into his laptop. The card contained hundreds of files, research data, lab results, email chains. David began reading, his background in data security helping him piece together the story. Dr. Michael Chen and Dr. Sarah Chen had been working on a new genetic testing protocol that could detect certain hereditary diseases years earlier than current methods. The technology was revolutionary. It was also expensive to develop, which meant they'd partnered with a pharmaceutical company called Helix Biopharm for funding. But according to the emails, the Chens had discovered something wrong. The testing protocol worked, but Helix wanted to add a proprietary data collection component that would gather patients' genetic information without proper consent. When the Chens objected, Helix threatened to pull funding and bury the research. The Chens had decided to go public. They'd prepared a report for the FDA and planned to present their findings at a bioethics conference. The dinner meeting the night they died was supposed to be a final negotiation with Helix executives. They never made it to that meeting. David sat back, his blood running cold. This wasn't just corporate espionage. This was murder, and if Helix knew about the backup data, they'd be looking for it, which meant they'd eventually find Lily. He glanced at the sleeping child. She'd called a random number in desperation, and by pure chance, she'd reached someone who had the skills to understand what he was reading, someone who had enough money to fight back, someone who had lost a sister and knew exactly what it felt like to fail to protect someone you loved. Maybe it wasn't chance at all. At 8 a.m., Karen returned with a CPS agent named Thomas Rodriguez. They spent 2 hours interviewing David, checking his apartment virtually via video call and verifying every detail of his background. Finally, at 10:30, Thomas looked up from his tablet. Mr. Foster, based on the emergency circumstances and your clean background check, I'm authorizing temporary emergency placement for up to 2 weeks while we complete a full home study. You'll need to attend a foster parent orientation session, and we'll be conducting unannounced check-ins. David nodded. Whatever you need. I have to ask, though, why are you doing this? You have no connection to this child. David thought about how to answer. He couldn't tell them about the SD card, not yet. Not until he knew who else might be involved, because nobody else answered her call. Thomas seemed to accept that. Fair enough, there's a mountain of paperwork, and Lily will need to be enrolled in therapy. She's been through severe trauma. I understand. 2 hours and 47 signatures later, David was officially Lily Chen's temporary guardian. Karen pulled him aside before they left. Mr. Foster, I don't know what's really going on here, but I believe you when you say you want to help her. Please don't make me regret bending the rules. I won't. And if you're right about her parents' death not being an accident, be careful. People who kill don't usually stop at one. David met her eyes. I know. He returned to room 412, where Lily was awake and sitting on the edge of the bed, looking lost. Hey, he said gently, ready to get out of here. She nodded. Where are we going? My apartment. It's not much, but it's safe, and I promised you dinosaur chicken nuggets. A tiny smile flickered across her face. You remembered. Always keep your promises, especially the ones about dinosaur-shaped food. As they walked through the hospital corridor, Lily reached out and slipped her small hand into his. David felt something break open in his chest, a wall he'd built 15 years ago finally crumbling. In the parking garage, David loaded Lily's small bag of belongings into his Tesla. As he opened the passenger door for her, he scanned the area, his old security instincts on high alert. No one seemed to be watching, but he couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. "David," Lily said as he started the car, "what happens if those people come looking for the card? Then we make sure we're ready." "How?" "By finding out everything we can about them first." He glanced at her. "Your parents were smart. They documented everything. We're going to use that to protect you and to make sure people know the truth. And then you get to be a kid again. You get to go to school and worry about homework and whether or not your favorite show is on. You get to be safe." Lily was quiet for a moment. "What if I can't remember how to be a kid? What if I'm too broken?" David's throat tightened. "You're not broken. You're hurt. There's a difference. Broken things don't heal. Hurt things do, with time and help. Did you heal after your sister?" "I'm working on it. Maybe we can work on it together." They drove through San Francisco's morning traffic to David's apartment building. Inside, Lily looked around the space. Minimalist furniture, clean lines, not a single personal photo on the walls. It looked like a hotel. "Do you live here alone?" she asked. "Yeah. I travel a lot. Or I used to." He realized he'd have to change that now. "We can decorate your room however you want. Paint the walls, get new furniture, whatever you need." "I get my own room?" The question broke his heart. "Of course you do." Over the next 3 days, David worked 2 parallel tracks. During the day, he helped Lily settle in, bought her clothes and school supplies, and tried to create some semblance of normalcy. At night, after she was asleep, he analyzed the data on the SD card and built his case. The research was damning. Helix Biopharm had known about the unauthorized data collection. They'd planned to sell aggregated genetic information to insurance companies and research facilities without patient consent, potentially making billions. When the Chens threatened to expose them, Helix had acted. David contacted an investigative journalist he'd worked with before, a woman named Rebecca Thornton, who'd broken several corporate corruption stories. She agreed to meet him at a coffee shop in the Mission District. "This is big," Rebecca said after reviewing the files, "but it's also dangerous. If Helix killed the Chens, they won't hesitate to go after anyone else who threatens to expose them. That's why we need to go public fast, before they realize the data still exists." "What about the kid? Where is she?" "Safe, and staying that way." Rebecca studied him. "You're playing guardian angel for a stranger's kid. That's not the David Foster I know. You've spent the last decade building walls." "Maybe I'm tired of walls." She smiled slightly. "The FDA will want to see this. So will the FBI. But we need more than just the research files. We need proof that Helix knew about the Chen's objections, proof that they had motive. The emails show that. Emails can be faked. We need a witness. Someone inside Helix who can confirm the timeline." She paused. "What about the police investigation into the accident?" "I'm working on that. I have a friend in the SFPD who owes me a favor." That friend was Detective Marcus Liu, who'd worked with David on a fraud case 2 years earlier. Marcus met him at a bar in North Beach that evening. "I pulled the accident report," Marcus said, sliding a folder across the table. "You're right to be suspicious. The Chen's car went off the road at Devil's Slide, which is a dangerous stretch, but the weather was clear that night. No rain, no fog, and both victims had low blood alcohol. Michael Chen was known to be a cautious driver. What did the accident reconstruction show? That's the interesting part. There were signs of impact on the rear bumper, consistent with being hit from behind. But the official report ruled it a single-vehicle accident due to driver error. David's jaw tightened. "Who signed off on that report?" Marcus tapped the folder. "Investigating officer was someone I don't recognize. Transfer from another precinct. Started working that district 3 weeks before the accident. Convenient." "Yeah, too convenient. I did some digging. The officer, name's Ryan Hutchins, has some interesting deposits in his bank account. $10,000 the day after the Chens died. Can you prove corruption?" Not yet, but I'm looking into it. If you're right about this being a hit, there'll be more evidence. These things always leave trails. How long? Give me a week, maybe 2. Marcus leaned forward. David, if you're protecting the kid, be careful. If Helix is willing to kill 2 researchers, a 9-year-old won't slow them down. That night, David lay awake in his bedroom, listening to the sounds of the city outside. Down the hall, Lily was sleeping in what he'd started calling her room, surrounded by the stuffed animals and books he'd bought her. In 3 days, she'd already started to seem less like a ghost and more like a real kid. But he knew they were running out of time. The next morning, Lily came into the kitchen while David was making breakfast. She'd started to eat more, to smile occasionally, to ask questions about normal things. Progress. "Can I ask you something?" she said, climbing onto a bar stool. "Always. When this is over, when we figure out what happened to my parents and make sure those bad people can't hurt anyone else, what happens to me?" David set down the spatula. He'd been dreading this question. "What do you want to happen? Can I stay here? With you?" His heart clenched. "Lily, I'm not. I'm still figuring this out. I've never been a parent. I barely know how to take care of myself most days. But you promised you wouldn't leave. You promised, and I won't. But there are people who are trained for this. People who know what they're doing. I don't want people who are trained. I want someone who cares." Tears filled her eyes. "Everyone keeps saying what's best for me, but nobody asks what I want. I want to stay with you. You're the only person who believed me. You're the only person who stayed." David sat down across from her. "Becoming your guardian permanently is a big deal. It would change both of our lives completely. Is that bad?" He thought about the last 3 days. The chaos of suddenly having a child in his life. The fear of doing something wrong. But also the moments of laughter when Lily beat him at Mario Kart. The way she'd started to relax, to let her guard down. The feeling that maybe, finally, he was doing something that mattered more than money or success. "No," he said softly. "It's not bad. It's actually kind of terrifying and wonderful at the same time. So you'll think about it?" "I'm already thinking about it." Lily smiled, a real smile this time. "Good. Because you make really good pancakes, and I don't want to lose that." 1 week later, Rebecca published her article. The headline read, "Stanford researchers killed after discovering illegal data collection in breakthrough genetic testing." The story detailed the Chen's research, Helix Biopharm's planned fraud, and the suspicious circumstances of their deaths. The response was immediate. The FDA launched an investigation. The FBI opened a criminal case. Helix's stock plummeted. Within 48 hours, 3 Helix executives were arrested, including the CEO. Detective Marcus Liu arrested Officer Ryan Hutchins on corruption charges. Under pressure, Hutchins confessed to falsifying the accident report in exchange for payment from a Helix security contractor. The security contractor led them to the man who'd argued with the Chens. He'd tampered with their car's brakes, making the crash look like an accident. He was arrested at the Canadian border trying to flee. Through it all, David kept Lily safe, kept her away from the media circus, and tried to give her space to grieve properly. The CPS agent, Thomas Rodriguez, visited regularly, impressed by how David had created a stable environment. "I have to admit," Thomas said during one visit, "when this started, I thought you'd realize how hard this is and bail. But you're really doing this." "Yeah," David said, glancing at Lily, who was doing homework at the kitchen table. "I really am. Have you thought about permanent guardianship?" "Every day. The paperwork's already started. Given the circumstances and Lily's clear preference to stay with you, I think we can make it happen." 3 months after that first phone call, David and Lily stood in a courtroom. The judge, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes, reviewed the paperwork. "Mr. Foster," she said, "taking on the responsibility of raising a child who's experienced severe trauma is not something to be undertaken lightly. Are you prepared for the challenges ahead?" "I don't think anyone's ever really prepared," David said honestly, "but I'm here, I'm committed, and I'm not going anywhere." The judge looked at Lily. "And you, young lady, Do you want Mr. Foster to be your legal guardian? Lily nodded. He promised he wouldn't leave, and he keeps his promises. The judge smiled. Then, by the power vested in me by the state of California, I hereby grant legal guardianship of Lily Chen to David Foster, effective immediately. She banged her gavel. Congratulations. Outside the courthouse, Lily slipped her hand into David's. So now what? Now we go home. We order pizza. We watch whatever movie you want. And tomorrow, we start figuring out the rest of our lives. Together, together. As they walked to the car, David's phone buzzed. A text from Rebecca. Stanford wants to honor the Chen's work. They're establishing a research ethics center in their name. Thought Lily should know her parents are being remembered as heroes. He showed Lily the message. She read it, tears streaming down her face. They'd like that. Yeah, they would. That night, after Lily was asleep, David sat in his living room and thought about the path that had led him here. A random phone call at 2:33 a.m., a desperate voice asking for help, a decision to answer instead of ignore. He'd spent 15 years running from the pain of losing Sophie, building walls and focusing on work because it was safer than feeling. But Lily had cracked those walls open, had forced him to confront the truth that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let yourself care again. His phone buzzed, a text from Lily's room. Are you awake? He walked down the hall and knocked softly. Everything okay? Lily was sitting up in bed, clutching her mother's locket. I was thinking about what you said, about hurt things healing with time and help. Yeah? I think I'm starting to heal. Because of you. David sat on the edge of her bed. You're doing the work. I'm just here to make sure you're not alone while you do it. That's the most important part, though. Not being alone. She paused. Can I ask you something? Always. Do you think my parents somehow knew? When they hid that card in the locket, do you think they knew I'd find someone who could help? David thought about the odds. A random number. A man with exactly the right skills and resources. A man who understood loss and was ready, finally, to let someone in. I think they loved you enough to hope, and sometimes hope is enough. Lily lay back down. Thank you for answering the phone. Thank you for calling. As David left the room, he paused in the doorway. Hey, Lily. Yeah? Your parents would be really proud of you. You're the bravest person I know. She smiled sleepily. You're pretty brave, too, for someone who spent 15 years hiding. He laughed softly. Good night, kid. Good night, Dad. The word hung in the air, unexpected and perfect. David's throat tightened. He'd never thought he'd hear that word directed at him, never thought he'd want to. Good night, sweetheart, he whispered. 6 months later, David and Lily sat on Ocean Beach, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. It had become their Sunday morning tradition, just like Lily used to do with her father. Do you think things happen for a reason? Lily asked, digging her toes in the sand. Or is it all just random? David considered the question. I used to think it was random, that we're all just bouncing around hoping to avoid disasters. But now, I think maybe there's something in between. Maybe we make our own meaning by how we respond to the random things that happen. Like you answering my call. Like me answering your call. Lily was quiet for a moment. I'm glad it was you. Out of all the numbers I could have pressed, I'm glad it was yours. Me too. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the waves roll in. David thought about how much his life had changed. His apartment now had photos on the walls, toys scattered around, a refrigerator covered in Lily's artwork. His days were filled with school pickups and homework help, and conversations about everything from math problems to the meaning of life. It was chaotic and exhausting and sometimes overwhelming. It was also the most alive he'd felt in 15 years. David, Lily said. Yeah? Do you think Sophie would have liked me? The question caught him off guard. They'd talked about Sophie a few times, but Lily rarely brought her up unprompted. I think she would have loved you. You're a lot like her, actually. Brave and stubborn and way too smart for your own good. Lily grinned. That's not always a compliment. No, but it's always true. He wrapped an arm around her shoulders. She'd be happy that I finally stopped running. Are you happy? David looked at the child beside him, this unexpected gift that had crashed into his carefully controlled life through a misdirected phone call. Yeah, I really am. Good, because you're stuck with me now. Best wrong number I ever answered. As the sun dipped below the horizon, David realized that sometimes the most important calls in life are the ones you never expected. Sometimes destiny sounds like a frightened child's voice in the middle of the night, asking if anyone's there. Sometimes saying yes to one moment of uncertainty changes everything. He'd built a fortune by knowing when to take calculated risks. But this, answering that phone, opening his heart to a hurting kid, had been the biggest risk of all. And somehow, impossibly, it had turned into the best decision he'd ever made. "Come on," he said, standing and brushing sand off his jeans. "Let's go home." Lily took his hand, and together they walked back across the beach toward the parking lot, toward the life they were building together, one day at a time. Behind them, the waves continued their eternal rhythm, washing away footprints and starting fresh with each tide. Just like them.